Good evening, everyone. Artemis 2 begins rolling out to the pad this week. Of course, we know some tough questions still remain on that. China is applying, believe it or not, to place 200,000 satellites in orbit, claiming Starlinks are unsafe. A legal study declares U.S.-China competition is definitely anchored to Earth geography. We'll look into that. And of course, to play on words, I am gobsmacked to learn that GOM Space, another company I've never heard of, signed a 2.9 million euro deal, supposedly, with a leading North American space company, who they then, in their press release, failed to mention. Starlink, is going to move thousands of their satellites closer to Earth this year. They have reasons. And did you know your self-driving car has a space tax associated with it? All this and our guest, space lawyer extraordinaire, Camisha Simmons. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. As you know, this program is brought to you by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. What do we do? You know what we do. We champion and strengthen emerging space startups and space-adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy. Our pitch events and world-class boot camps fortify startups to be better investor-ready. And we're expansion mode this year, so get ready for that too. And a lot of our work, especially this podcast, is supported by our listeners and fans like all of you out there. Remember, the center is a 501c3 nonprofit, so just go to our website, cscf.space/support, and click that donate button. Drop something in the tip jar. Thanks so much for all your help. Now, my longest space friend ever, Michael Wayne, is here with us. Come on in, ma'am. There he is. Hey.
How's
You're growing it back. You're growing it back, I see. What is going on?
Yeah. You know, I had a few complaints about my clean shaven. Yeah, I did actually. Really? Yeah. So I don't know. I've had a beard most of the last 15 years. So everybody just thinks I'm a stranger when I shave it. But I always shave around my birthday, so I'm just going to keep doing that. There you go. I think this is probably my limit. I don't think I'm going to let go.
Yeah. Well, I keep it kind of thing too. But I think the last time I had a fully clean shaven face was sometime after Ronald Reagan got into office. So I've always had something. Or this or all of it. I mean,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The only look I haven't tried is one of those long things like lumberjack thing, and then shave that part like an Amish guy. I mean, I haven't done that.
Right.
I'm probably not a little long in the tooth to do that now.
My best friend has two braids.
Oh, they're Fu Manchu from hell.
Right. No, he's a kind of a total badass, that guy.
Okay.
Yeah. It's wild. He's been doing it. It's long. It's got to be foot and a half long. Yeah. It's nuts. It's pretty neat. But
okay.
Anyway, what's going on? How's things?
Okay. Well, the first thing that's going on. Veronica Ann is in the house and Morty's in the house.
Hey y'all, thank you.
We'll see who else joins us here in a little bit. No, normally it's been one of those days. I think we talked about that beforehand. Today was a day just of a lot of busy work doing maintenance type stuff on everything in business and in life. So there's a few tasks I want to get done today. I didn't even get close. I did not even get close from all the other paperwork, and I had to send things out and basic bills. I had to do all this stuff. And so next thing you know, here we are.
Yeah.
I wrote the script 15 minutes before the show. I mean, it's the whole thing. And
this is what we got.
So if the news is like boring as whale shit tonight, that's kind of my fault. There's other stuff out there that's interesting, but everybody else has already covered it to death.
Yeah.
Like the medical, emergency on ISS. Right.
And that's not the money in space intersection. So while it's interesting and it's important, it's not really our angle. So
right, exactly. And so, but it's something that gets close to our angle, of course, is that NASA announced they are rolling out the Artemis 2 rocket to the launch pad this week. And so, and people are like, okay, yeah, they're doing it. I guess it's really going to happen. That's great. There are a lot of questions that persist. I know Rick Tomlinson had a question for the serious engineer friends. He said, on return, if the call was made not to re-enter using Orion, what is the level of compatibility between this system and, say, the airlocks on ISS Dragon or even the Chinese station?
Wow, I did not see that, and honestly, that had not occurred to me. I kind of dig that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But one guy said the key issues aren't airlocks or docking standards, certification, mission geometry.
Okay.
And so supposedly Orion, IDA, Crew Dragon all sit in the same IDSS NASA docking system family. So in principle, supposedly the interfaces are related. In practice, who knows?
Okay.
Charles Lurio on this topic said, whom we know, we have had in the show, he suggested they might not have the delta V needed to get into Earth orbit upon return.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So orbital dynamics, Keith Cowing says orbital dynamics would be the main issue, but not necessarily docking interfaces. They could meet up with ISS, but maybe not fully dock. They have pressure suits, and so they could do it that way if they had to, or bring something over they could wear.
Man, that would be a heart-stopping. Well, okay, this isn't working. It wasn't our plan, but suit up, folks. We're going outside.
Right, just like they did in Conquest of Space in 1955. George Powell is smiling right now. It really happened. They're carrying bottles of oxygen with them, and they're on a cable, and they're pulling themselves over.
God, honestly, that topic did not even cross my mind. That's a pretty fascinating, and those folks that were responding, Lurio and everybody else, like that's cool. Of course, we don't want anything bad to happen. Let's be really
absolutely. Everybody's rooting for them.
They're
just going to the moon. They're going around it a few times and coming back, just like Apollo 8. That's all it is.
Yep.
Apollo 8 on Viagra. Here we go.
All right. Well, SLS is rolling out. It's going to take 12 hours. We know what happens. Hopefully there's no lightning. There's no big storms on the way. And they've got time. Okay. So
now another question on a separate topic though, while I'm thinking about it, because I have Alzheimer's now. So it's like here's the thing. Because we have article after article after article about the medical emergency in ISS or bringing the crew home. But it just occurred to me, we still don't know who this guy is. Do you know? Does anybody know who this guy is?
Think they've announced it. Right.
And more importantly, they don't know what his ailment is. His or her ailment is. It's requiring them to bring this person home early. And so how many G's do they pull on reentry?
Oh, lots. Yeah.
Like 9 or something at its peak.
Yeah.
Well, how do we know this person will be able to survive that if they're so impaired that they have to leave the ISS early? I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but I'm just like, this is physics, and medicine, and we can't just, cross our fingers and pray for it. What is going on?
So Dallas is saying, by the way, there's no way Orion can enter Earth orbit from the moon. And we know that Dallas knows his shit. So I think that, to me, that's gospel. So I'm just taking that for what it says. So good to know. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
And hi, Dallas. Hi, Jason. Welcome. Okay. So let's get to this. This is the funniest thing I've seen all day. China. They applied to the international bodies of some kind to put 200,000 satellites in orbit. because they say that Starlink is too dangerous.
Right? Well, all right. But in a serious note, this goes right back to what Dr. Hanlon was saying just a couple weeks ago. This is lawfare in action.
Yep,
this is them trying to, clog up a system, build an unrealistic architecture. They're not the only ones. There was somebody in one of the African nations that was talking about 300,000 satellite network. So the amount of paper satellites in the sky now is over 500,000 paper satellites.
Well, when we start banging into each other, we'll just have paper shrapnel then. It won't hurt anybody.
Right. No, it was interesting. We can't pull it up here because it's blocked, but it's two different networks of 100,000 each, and this comes off the back of SpaceX asking for a new application of, I believe it's 7,500 has been approved. A new 7,500 has been approved recently. Mm-hmm. So this was China's response. 7,500 was approved. Let's ask for 200,000.
And maybe you'll get 20.
Right. So yeah, but this is precisely what Hanlon was talking about just a few weeks ago, where it's a strategy of the People's Republic of using the systems that mostly Western organizations put into place, but using the systems to send a message and also to block other people from doing stuff. Yeah, this
is going to be a major topic tonight, by the way, with our guests. So we're going to dive right into that with what I think is the biggest real world example I've seen in the last week.
Right.
So,
right.
So there's one thing. The next thing that's coming up also has to do with China, but it's an article as interesting. It's an article on a website called Lawfare Media.
Ta-da.
Which I think is ironic.
Ironic, yeah. I didn't say that beforehand. Yeah.
So a guy from George Washington University, he's drawing from a longer article, is arguing that the U.S. maintains advantage in the race, but all our capabilities still depend on ground facilities, and we have a network of allies and partners, including overseas territories, which offers a global infrastructure that China currently lacks. Now that is our strong point in all this, and getting back to the moon. And so, but the suggestion is also that if some of that alliance breaks apart, or one key guy decides to go elsewhere that week, you lose that advantage very, very quickly.
Yeah,
I thought that was something worth mentioning. And there's a lot of good stuff, but we're still leveraging allies that we had from the Cold War.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
The one, you mean the ones that were not burning? But
yes, the ones we're not burning.
Right. I think that makes a really strong point. China is aggressively building relationships into the whole continent of Africa. Their Silk Road, Belt and Roads program has been extraordinarily successful there, and that the weight that they use, the wealth that they use to compel other nations is based on the Belt and Road program. So they've done a lot. Africa is very helpful if you're going to build a space program. Right. There are many nations in Africa that are right on the equator that make really great allies and partners. So I don't think it would take very long for China to catch up. They would be playing catch up, but I don't think we should consider ourselves secure in that right now. Okay. Turkey just announced, we don't have the article up, but Turkey just announced a partnership. I believe it was with Senegal. Senegal? No, that doesn't sound right. I forget what. So Turkey just announced a partnership for the east coast of Africa. I forget which nation, to build a spaceport in the same way that ESA and France use the Brazil, the port out of Brazil, and other folks use Guyana as a port. So they're doing the same thing. That's what Israel, Turkey is doing, and yeah, I would not ignore the relationship between China and the greater part of Africa.
Somalia, he's right. Dallas is right. Yeah, they're going to build something in Somalia. I don't know how that's going to work out for them.
Yep.
That's another place that's just like a cluster. But okay.
Tom Murata, who we've had on our show a couple times. Thank you. Appreciate that. Tom Murata both said, he said, there's more to launch than just angle, right? There's a lot more to it than that. So
that can be applied in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Well, this is a cool article. I did not read this beforehand, so I'm gonna tackle this one afterwards because I'm definitely interested.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah. Just a quick throwaway one I thought was funny. There's this outfit in Luxembourg called GOM Space, and I guess they do build satellite platforms for interplanetary type of work. Mm-hmm. But they say they've just, in their press release here, they just raised 2.9 million euros from a leading, and are working with a leading North American space company. But they didn't mention exactly which one it is.
Right.
For all I know, it's Pat Bond, and TGV rockets.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Pat Bond doesn't have 3 million euros to throw around, so
no, he never has. But somehow he always stays afloat, and you always wonder about that. But he can just be him. It's all right. Yeah, we all know him.
I really wonder why people built this press release in the first place, because it doesn't really say very much. But great, they got 3 million euros. Good for them.
Okay, yeah. Here's something with a little more data to it. On Gizmodo, SpaceX is going to move thousands of Starlink satellites actually closer to Earth.
Yeah,
not by a whole lot, maybe 50 miles, but it's for security reasons and a bunch of other things.
That's a big deal. I've been seeing a lot about this. It's farther. I think it's more 150 kilometers, 75-ish miles.
No, they're moving it. They're moving it from 342 miles to 298.
Oh, okay. There you go. Right. Oh, you're right.
It's about 4,400 satellites. Okay. And it'll be carried out over the course of this year. I don't know. See, intuitively, my stomach knotted up when I read this. I thought, well, isn't it true that the closer you get to Earth, the faster your orbit's going to decay?
It's true, but they already have a fast replacement cycle, so that's an advantage for them. During the solar maximum, that becomes more of a problem, but for now, it actually seems really smart. Less maneuvering, less congestion, faster refresh times.
Well, here's something I didn't know. Apparently, including Starlink satellites, they're constantly maneuvering to avoid collisions.
Yeah.
And if they suddenly lost their ability to do so, this could lead to a catastrophic crash within an average of just 2.8 days.
Yeah.
So this is already happening. The Chinese haven't launched their 20,000 yet.
Right. 200,000. 200,000.
They'll get 20.
Yeah.
Or less.
Yeah.
They applied for 200. It ain't going to happen, folks.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. But they say the lower the satellites, the lower the collision risk, according to all the studies. So we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see how that works for them. If he ups his replacement rate, you got to also balance out, what's cost effective and what's going to make things sustainable. So I guess we'll find out. And finally, somebody wrote an op-ed piece on the space tax we all pay on a few people's self-driving cars. And so you usually talk about LiDAR costs, compute power, and AI training are the big three. But there's all sorts of things going on, like the ionosphere itself, because of the sun-charged layer, levies an invisible tax on every self-driving car. And if you live in Africa, South America, or Southeast Asia, that tax is higher. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Did not
know about that at all.
Because they say, but it's interesting. They say the ionosphere, folks, isn't a pane of glass. It's a turbulent swimming pool. During solar storms, it becomes scintillated and causing radio signals from satellites to flicker and fade like a dying flashlight. And so you have to build backups. But you can't predict when the ionosphere will all of a sudden blank out your signal. So there's a lot to do to try to work around things like that to make self-driving cars work. And that, of course, that just adds to the cost of them. So, and the cost to operate.
Right.
I thought that was quite interesting. But that's about all the news we have that's kind of even fit to show this week. It's been a kind of a slow week so far. It'll pick up. The news feed is still filled full of the ISS crew coming back early and things like that.
Yeah.
All right. And so
but unfortunately we're, week one, last week, we had our first nearly $1 billion deal. What was it? Yep. $800 million deal, something close to that.
Something like that. Yeah.
No big deals this week.
No.
3 million euros does not count as a big deal this week. So
no, not at all. I was like, 3 million? Is that all? God.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, then again, once the SpaceX IPO flies, all bets are off at that point.
Right.
All the numbers will go off the screen for the rest of the year.
Right.
So hey, but interesting notes though. I got a lot of stuff. That's why I love that Lawfare website. It really ties into what we're going to be talking about this evening with our guest.
Sure.
Coming up, Camisha Simmons, space lawyer extraordinaire. She's been here. She's been with us before. She's in the process of publishing a great new article. I don't know where it's going to get published yet. We're going to find out. It's called Building Empires in the Sky, and it talks all about all the various angles that we can do to actually not only make a great space commercial infrastructure, but make it pay really, really well. So Camisha L. Simmons, managing member of Simmons PLLC, welcome to the show, man. Welcome back, I should say. It's been about 6 months.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great. Okay. I warned everybody and threatened everybody online in the last couple of hours. I have a big question for you. And it may be the only question I have to ask tonight, depending on how it's taken and how our guys in the peanut gallery over here respond to it. Was we have a real world example in front of us of all the stuff you were talking about in your article. And that's the fact that a few days ago, our own Michael Lane made a very big announcement with regard to Liftport building a space elevator for the moon. And as he explained his design system, basically it has two ends of it. You got a terminus at each end. One terminus is on the lunar surface. The other terminus, however, is in L1. Now, when we talk about property rights in space and property claims, we're usually talking about planetary surfaces, asteroids, things of that nature. Out in the world of space itself, the only things we have any real legal discussions are geosynchronous orbital sites. They're managed by an international commission of some kind. You have to apply for a spot. Having said that, however, over the years, decades even, those slots have been bought and sold and traded over the years. So that does happen. Now, all of a sudden, the issue comes with the Lagrange points. There are 5 of them, and they're all, when you think about it, prime pieces of space real estate as well. we've just never talked about it much because we thought it was decades, a generation or two away, where we could kick the can down the road and not going to worry about it. Michael has declared he wants to put a lunar elevator on the moon in the next 1,000 days. So we better start thinking about it. So Camisha Simmons, lawyer extraordinaire, what can the rest of the world do to stop him?
To stop him? Hey, wait a minute.
to stop him from
building his terminus in L1, which has now become the most prime piece of real estate in the Earth Moon system.
I have described L1 and L2 as Park Place and Boardwalk.
Yep.
I think they're the most.
I say there's nothing to stop you. There's things that restrict you.
Okay.
So anything with outer space, right, is, you have the Outer Space Treaty that says none of the nation states can engage in national appropriation of outer space. You're a private party, so does it apply to you? Or does it apply to just the U.S. government who became a party to the U.S. Treaty, Outer Space Treaty of 1967? So in the U.S., and I think on the last time I was here, I discussed the 2015 law that we have here in the U.S. that says private U.S. citizens and companies can own space resources if you're engaged in commercial recovery of the space resource and you obtain it. You can own it, and a space resource is a non-living resource. So there's a question mark as to whether or not you can claim that actual land.
Okay.
But there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. But if you're operating strictly under, the principle that you can't engage in national appropriation and that you can't claim property, it doesn't mean you can't possess it for a period of time. And there's this question mark that has to be answered, but will not be answered until there's active operations like what you propose, as to when that period of possession that you have expires.
Okay.
And so there's going to be, as you discussed earlier, lawfare and this dispute as to how long this private party or this government can claim that particular real estate on the moon or wherever else. And as you refer to my article that I recently, it's unpublished, but it has to do with building empires in the sky. I like that term, building empires in the sky, because it's about, nobody wants to say it, but it's about territory expansion off Earth. So on Earth we have, even the U.S. has engaged in activity that I would say would be a power play. Some would say would be empire expansion. But, we've seen it with Russia and Ukraine. We've seen it with China and Taiwan, this empire building, this territory expansion, wanting to expand your territory. And so I think what we're going to see and what, this space, nobody wants to say it, but the current space race is about off-Earth territory expansion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It is about building empires in the sky. So it is about who gets there first to claim the real estate. When we look at the U.S. government itself, that's party to the Outer Space Treaty, the U.S. government said we're not going to engage in national appropriation. However, the U.S. government in 2020 put together the Artemis Accords, and the Artemis Accord says, well, they all agree, all the parties to the Artemis Accords agree that the extraction and utilization of space resources is not national appropriation. They all agree under Section 11 of the Artemis Accords that they can form these safety zones, and in these safety zones are designed to avoid harmful interference with your operations in that area. But the Artemis Accords specifically say that it's temporary.
Yeah.
So the question is, how long can you hold that territory? Yeah. When you're operating as a government under the Outer Space Treaty and the Artemis Accords. And what's interesting is that the UN, they have regarding space resource activities, their non-binding draft that they published in December, I think it was December 17, 2025, has this section that says states carrying out space resource activities shall ensure that measures related to safety and emergency assistance are not used as a basis for establishing safety zones or any arrangements that could amount to de facto appropriation of outer space or its resources. So that is currently in that draft. So that's, I guess, but that's another thing, that's the government's agreeing that, okay, you may have some sort of safety zone, but you're not going to keep this forever in order to try to appropriate that particular territory.
I have been kind of worried about that, and Jason talks about his nuclear reactor needs a 400-mile safety zone. Like how big is too big? How big is fair? Is there an agreement on what that looks like? And how long is fair? There's no agreement on either of those topics, right?
There's no agreement. It's until it happens, then somebody's gonna cry foul, number one. And there's going to be this international probably dispute regarding it, but no, there's nothing that says how many on Earth is like how many acres, how many acres is too many acres, right? Because if I get there first, I'm going to claim all this acreage and a fence around the perimeter, and I'm going to say we're conducting all these operations here, and I'm going to say you can't avoid you can't come in here because you have to exercise due regard and you have to avoid harmful interference. And I'm going to make all these legal arguments as to why you can't come in here.
Yeah, and that's a lot of historically, that's how a lot of Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana got started.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is going to be, how I envision the off-Earth territory expansion that, China, US, everybody, we're empire building, right? So, you can call it another name for, marketing and propaganda reasons, but, it is in essence empire building, but it's off Earth, and we're expanding off Earth, and we want to get there first. China wants to get there first. Everybody wants this huge chunk of outer space. However, there's people argue, can you own outer space? I think for private individuals, yes. But when you ask the question as to how long can you hold it, in the article that you have reviewed, I think it's for those who say that outer space cannot be owned, it belongs to everyone, then I think you have to look at it as anybody operating within a certain area in outer space, that they're sort of operating with a right to use a sort of a license to use that area. And I would equate that to a leasehold interest on Earth. It's essentially, if you build a structure on the moon, well, that is, on Earth, that's a ground lease. And real estate developments, there's possibility that one party owns the land itself, and then the developer that builds the property on top of that land would ground lease that land for pretty much a long-term lease. But if you look at it from another perspective, I look at it, because I'm, grew up in South Texas, big oil and gas state. So I know oil and gas, and oil and gas is on my birth certificate because my father worked in oil and gas. So for over 40 years. But so I look at it like when you look at an oil and gas lease, right? You have this, this oil and gas E&P exploration and production company that goes up and leases up a bunch of land from the landowners to go drill and explore for oil and gas on their land. So if we as a human, if we're looking at it from the you can't own space, then humankind together communally is the owner of outer space, because it belongs to everyone. So then humankind as the owner would be the lessor leasing the land to whoever's operating in that particular area in outer space. So a leasehold interest doesn't last forever. You have the right to use for, a certain period of time. In oil and gas situations under oil and gas leases, when you're trying to produce oil and gas, every oil and gas lease typically has a addendum clause that says, with the primary term that says, you can explore for oil and gas for, a primary term of, let's say, 3 years. And then the secondary term is for so long as oil and or gas is being produced on that land.
Okay.
And then produce, essentially, under Texas law would be, it's not just you're producing oil and gas, you're producing it in paying quantities, which would mean you're, producing it at a profit. And if you're not producing it at a profit, would a reasonable, prudent operator continue operating, even though it's not producing at a profit? But then there's also, under the oil and gas leasing scenario, where you have savings clauses. So if operations,
sorry, what did you say?
savings clause, a savings clause or provision that would keep the lease open if production would cease for a temporary period of time. So you have a temporary cessation of production. You can put a savings clause that says, that, as long as it was only a short, reasonable period of time, or you tried to rework, or rework a well to get it back up to production for a certain period of time, that would keep the lease open. It wouldn't terminate because you stopped producing for a temporary period of time. So I think if we're looking at, the area, operating in a certain area in outer space, let's say, in this, the article that I circulated, it's, let's say if you're mining for helium-3 on the moon. Okay. So if you look at it from how oil and gas leasing is done on Earth, you could continue in that area mining helium on the moon as long as it was profitable. But once it stops being profitable, then you lose the exclusive right to use that area. But if you're doing it, you're in the area for scientific purposes, or, and I would say that even in a nuclear reactor, you probably can make that argument that, as long as we're producing energy profitably, we can continue operating in this area. But if you are not, producing anything, and you're just, we just have a base here, I would think you would have to make a, continuous operation, set that as a standard continuous operations, where and I think it would have to be a consensus, internationally across the globe, that as long as we have continuous operations in this area, we get exclusive possession of this area. And if someone says, well, we need access and you got to give us an easement or a right of way across this property, can't just, because also under the Outer Space Treaty, it says that, there should be free access to all the celestial bodies. Right. So if you try to continue, the only reason I think you would be able to keep people out altogether and not even let them come in at all to your area of operation, I think the governments would have to say that for national security purposes, we can't allow you in here. And of course, there's going to be legal arguments, globally regarding those issues, or, they're going to come together and have another treaty. Who knows? But in terms of you're going to ask a question.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask. So, kind of being specific here, we've got, and this isn't really about me, right? Tom brought up a good point about my project, but in our case, we've got an anchor down on the surface of the moon at the equator, Sinus Medae, and then the string continuously connects out at the Lagrange point. It actually goes beyond that by a pretty far ways, but that the station is physically connected to the moon, and so we're in L1, as a result of being connected to the moon. Does that make a difference? Do I have to worry about the L point? Do I need to worry about the moon, the anchor station on the moon?
I think you probably would worry about the moon more than anything, in terms of your claim to exclusive rights and to possession to whatever.
Okay.
Now, if someone had wanted whatever area, the L point or whatever, if they wanted in and they made the argument that you shouldn't have exclusive rights to this area, then you probably are arguing over everything, because if it's valuable area, then you're arguing over exclusivity to that particular area. And I think that's going to be the analysis under whether it's landmass or anything that you're trying to have exclusivity over. It is going to be whether or not the law allows you that exclusivity. And from your position, you're going to have to come up with a great argument as to why the law and your interpretation of the law and how you apply it grants you that exclusivity.
Okay.
And then for as long as you need that exclusivity. And so, that's where, the lawyers come in to make sure they put forth the right legal argument to make sure that you have that exclusivity and that your operations are protected.
Mm-hmm. Just a thing, because really we're talking also about effectiveness in applying all this. How big is L1 really? Because L1 is a place where a lot of different gravitational and orbital mechanics forces converge. So ideally, you can sit in that one perfect spot and just move along with the rest of the Earth and Moon system, and it looks like you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So how big is that effective bubble? That's got to be like in physics, it's got to be a bubble there. And if you stay within it, you're probably okay. If you leave that bubble a little bit, you may start drifting away again. How big is that? Does anyone know? You ever talked to a physicist about that?
I definitely don't think there's a legal answer, right, Camisha? There's no legal answer for that. Right. So I'm going to actually take that one then.
Okay.
I brought it to the chief scientist of U.S. Space Force and asked him that specific question, because it's a mathematical point that here's the Earth and here's the moon. As the moon moves around the Earth, its orbit gets a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller over the course of the year. That perturbation changes L1 moment by moment, 24/7, 365. So it's really a mathematical point more than anything else. What I asked the chief scientist was, if there's a 2 degree of arc separation for satellites at GEO, can we apply that same 2 degree of arc separation at L1? He's like, that makes sense to me. So if you're on the moon and you've got 2 degrees of arc, that's how much space that we're going to try to operate in. More specifically, we've got a plan for a small constellation of satellites that will hold that position a little bit and give us some operating room. So that's the answer from 2019. December 2019. So that answer is not real. We cannot count on that answer, but that's the best guidance that we've gotten. Sorry, I didn't mean to pull away from Camisha there.
Although that raises another question, because Dallas Beanhoff here just said, he says the elevator may not be anchored. I don't get that. Is that a physics problem or a legal problem?
Our plan is to have it anchored. You don't actually have to. You can have it just using the magic of 2 competing gravities. You can balance it, but for us, that's a lot harder. And then he's right about balancing the part that's hanging towards Earth. So it's a pretty big chunk of the mass is Earth side. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Camisha, we had Wes Fairs on a couple weeks ago, and he was super excited about, as a private citizen, claiming rocks in space. He has claimed the 3 stars in Orion's belt. I found that amazing and somewhat preposterous, but he's claimed them. And he got a note back from the State Department that says it does not violate our treaties. That they won't say yes that they agree with it, but what they would say was it doesn't violate our treaties. So then he picked another couple rocks out in the Oort belt, and so he's processing those. And you know, as a private citizen, what he's trying to do is it's a little bit like clickbait, right? It's outrageous, but it's to test a point. So what are your thoughts on claiming rocks in space as a private citizen?
Just a plain rock. I mean, if you look at the 2015 space law, it says you can own non-living resources if you're a private citizen, but it doesn't define what commercial recovery is. So it says if you're engaged in commercial recovery of that space resource and you obtain it, you can own it. But what commercial recovery means is a question mark because they didn't add a definition. So he has wiggle room there. I think the pertinent question to what Wes, and I know Wes, what he's trying to do is that I think the pertinent question is, can you claim ownership, stake and ownership claim to any property in outer space if you don't physically, as a human, go in and possess it? So what do you need to stake that claim? Can I send a robot? Can I send AI? And, you know, or do you have to have actual human going there and staking a claim? Can you do it sight unseen as you do on Earth with real estate transactions, or will it take for him to send something up, you know, and stake a claim? Say I send my robot or whatever he sends there and stakes that claim and says I have possession because I physically, you know, possessed it, and I'm staking a claim and I'm invoking the 2015 space law that says I can own space resources that I obtain.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because even apparently, according to Wes, even the State Department has admitted their area of jurisdiction probably doesn't exceed the Kuiper Belt. What they're saying. I've never heard a government agency actually say there's limits to even our activity. You know.
Yeah. No one technically. You have jurisdiction what you launch into space. You maintain jurisdiction of whatever you launch into space, but saying anyone has any particular jurisdiction over the property, and even I think that there's the other piece to anyone claiming property in outer space is the enforcement mechanism. Because, you know, when you have owned property on Earth, whether it's, you know, purchasing real estate, you have an ownership interest, a deed. Let's say when it comes to real estate, you record that deed in the local records that reflects your ownership. So you have you know, a piece, some sort of instrument that says you own it. You have somewhere to record that ownership interest so the public is on notice at large that you own it. And then you have enforcement mechanisms. If someone tries to come in and say, no, I own that, and you say, no, I own it, then you have an enforcement mechanism through the court system to clarify your ownership of that piece of property. That's how it operates on Earth. So, you know, with just going and saying I own something in outer space, we still don't have, you know, other than things that are launched into space, a registry for all of that. And then we still don't know how it's going to work when we try to, you know, when someone else says they own the same thing that you claim in space, who's going to enforce your ownership interest that you're saying you have a claim of ownership. Maybe someone in another country is also claiming that same property. Where's, who's going to enforce your assertion of ownership? And so
this is why. Hold on. This is why I asked. Just give me a sec. This is why I asked about the size of L1, because if it's 2 degrees of arc in either direction, as Michael suggests, that's actually a lot of room. That's potentially thousands of miles, which means other people can set up business there doing other things, and you won't get in each other's way.
Right.
That was the point I was trying to make. If it's only the size of a basketball, it's Mike or nothing.
Right.
You see, and so that's interesting, because now you have room, and this actually helps your case, I think. Camisha, tell me if I'm wrong. So other organizations can set up maybe lunar material processing facilities and process it right there in place, and only the finished product goes back to Earth. And now that takes care of the COSPAR problem in a lot of ways. And so it's all good.
Well, I'm definitely going to charge them to attach to my elevator. Let's be really clear about that. And then, as long as they're willing to do that, they're my best friends. Absolutely.
Okay, so if you're saying I got to charge you, then you're asserting an ownership interest, right? Because ownership is a bundle of rights, including the right to profit from that property. And so you're saying I have the right to profit from it. So you're pretty much in the bundle of rights of ownership. You're saying I have that right to profit from it. So I'm claiming, instead of them saying, well, no, it's free access for all, you may have a possession right while you're operating there, but you don't have the right to profit from this area.
I'm definitely going to push that direction, right? Which is why that 2 degrees of arc was useful to me, because if we get there first, being first matters, right? Being first matters. Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask you. So, and by the way, where can people find your article? Because it's quite interesting. But I really want to dig
into. I haven't published it yet. So,
okay. So if they connected with you on LinkedIn, would you be able to send it to them?
Yeah, I can send it to them. Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I wanted to tackle this piece in here about Texas, because one, would Texas care, or is this going to be a national thing? But I really like the language of the Texas court, so I wanted to read that and kind of dig into that. Can I do that for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So in your paper, what is required to successfully win on such a claim is explained by the Texas court. Blah, blah, blah. Skip. Satisfying this definition normally requires proof of 6 elements. They consist of visible appropriation that is open and notorious. I'm curious about notorious. That is peaceful, that is made under a claim of right, that is adverse and hostile to the claim of the owner. I don't understand that. And that is consistent and continuous for the duration of the statutory period. So what does open and notorious mean, and what is hostile to the claim of the owner mean?
Okay, so this is, I guess we need to preface this because, in my article I have a section on, how things may apply to governments, and then there's a section on how things may apply to us as private citizens. So as private citizens, private companies, non-governmental organizations, as us individually, under the UN's Declaration of Human Rights, it says, we have the right to own property. So there is the position globally that it is a human right to own property. So let's say you go in the outer space, you stake a claim of ownership, and you invoke the 2015 space law on private ownership of space resources. Where, okay, your right to possess a certain area of operation or the land is not forever, right? You can't own it forever. It's only temporary, while you're operating or whatever. Then you would, there's this other doctrine, and most states have it under their, law, either statutory or common law, is a doctrine of adverse possession, where you can claim an ownership interest after a certain period of time. Let's say someone, it's like a squatter, right? Someone, for a lot of people, maybe there was land passed down from inheritance, and let's say you're out in the country in a rural area, and there's like this open 10 acres, and nobody's ever claimed it, and it's just out there. And so you go out there and for 10 years straight, because for 10 years straight you openly claim ownership by you build structures on it, you put a fence around it, but there's this other legal owner out there that's an absentee owner, but you openly go out and do all these things to the property, and openly do things that are open and notorious, that say I'm the owner of this 10 acres, although there's a legal owner out there as on a deed that says somebody else, but they haven't shown up in 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
And
So
so
the squatter's right handle here.
Yeah, it's called the doctrine of adverse possession, where you stake a claim to ownership of the property through adverse possession, where you say, I've been claiming this for 10 years, I've been open and notorious, I've been doing all these things, there's this absentee owner that hasn't showed up. So then you would initiate a lawsuit to claim ownership through the doctrine of adverse possession over the true legal owner, and you would have a court declare that you are now the owner through adverse possession. So that is what I think may evolve into a sort of theory that may be applied eventually to operators in outer space who are trying to claim territory. If you've been operating in that area for 10, 20 years, and eventually you'll just say, well, we're the true owners. We've been there all this time, and so it's no longer temporary. We want to assert true, the complete ownership of this land or whatever in outer space.
Okay, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
The idea that could be applied to space had not occurred to me, so that's fun. All right, we only have 3 minutes left. Bring out your crystal ball. What does the next 5 years look like, and what does the next 25 years look like?
I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not a prophet or a psychic, but next 5 years, I really do think there's going to be active activity on the moon. And it's possible, given that, we have these companies that have autonomous construction capabilities, that they're going to be building something out there on the moon. The question is, what parts of the moon and who gets there first? And so, whoever, there's this race to get to the prime. Yeah, Michael Lane is going to get there first and stake his claim and say, this is my safety zone, stay out of it. And then I'm a private company, so I have this other law out there that says I can own certain things. But next 5 years, I think there's going to be active, building of things on the moon. It's just a question of who's going to be doing it. And then 25 years out, I don't know. That's pretty far out to predict things, because in 25 years, who knows what even the technology capabilities are going to be. And then on top of that, given with just the geopolitics, we don't even know how things are going to be here on Earth, given everything going on currently here on Earth. So who knows?
Yep.
Okay. All
who
right.
knows? That's
one last thing before we go. Regardless of what kind of luck you get in publishing your paper, would you be interested in delivering a version of it, at least, at my business track at ISDC this coming June?
Yes, sure. And I'm actually part of the planning for that, and
Good.
And then I'm part of the planning for the space settlement track, because I'm on that committee for NSS. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
There. So if you want me to present, just add me to your track, because I definitely will plan to be in McLean, Virginia.
Okay.
Is it McLean or McLean? I don't know. I'm saying it the Texas way. McLean.
It's
I'm saying it
McLean.
the Texas way.
Well, technically they say it's Tyson's Corner, but take your pick.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Camisha Simmons, space lawyer extraordinaire. Thank you for being here again, and we hope to see you again real soon. And we're definitely now going to see you at ISDC. So thank you for doing that. That's great. It'll be lovely to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Wow. I knew this would be the kind of a show that I wanted it to be. It fit my vision perfectly. It's wonderful.
Well, it also helped that she said all the things I wanted to hear. So thank you.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
There are sandwiches in our future.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Veronica loved it. That's all that matters. Okay. There is no guest this coming Thursday, although Sean's working hard on maybe finding us one. But in lieu of that, there will be a lot of rabid discussion about recent events to come, and of course the usual tomfoolery. As always, 8 p.m. Eastern. For Michael Lane and Sean Key and our guest tonight, Camisha Simmons from the Center of Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.